Well, good morning, and thank you for joining us. I like to start. So first of all, my name is Anderson David. I represent TeamSnap. I don't know if you all have heard of TeamSnap, but if you do have kids who play youth sports, we are we are your Sherpa, right? We literally help you get to and from the games in terms of locations, maps, communications, whatever you need throughout the entire season. So we've got about an audience of about 25 million logged in authenticated users. 75% of the United States that households that have kids in them have at least one youth sports participant. So massive audience. And then just in terms of why we're here, it's really about just communicating that there is that evolution. Someone mentioned earlier, literally now kids in junior high school have like NIL deals. Well, aside from that, it's actually a great way to connect with communities and make sure that you're involved at the ground roots level. But enough about me. We're not here to talk about TeamSnap. We're here to celebrate this fascinating young lady next to me by the name of Mandy Gill, who serves as the Vice President of Marriott International. You all know.
He's overselling with fascinating. I'm wondering where this is going.
You'll see. You'll see. I don't have to give you all an education on what Marriott is, but in terms of what you may or may not know, aside from it being an iconic brand, the organization literally has 30 individual brands, 8,700 properties, and is in 139 countries. So I guess you're busy.
It's a lot, and we're actually over 30 brands. Listen, it's hard to keep track.
What's the other one?
Well, we just added Studio Res, which is a new mid-scale, and Apartments by Marriott.
Wow, that's 32. Okay.
And good.
Until
like another month.
But before we kind of delve into talking shop, one of the things I love to do with these fireside chats is just to get to know Mandy a little bit better, right? Because I think there's a frame of reference you can understand from how folks approach their job and approach their role based upon their personal experiences. So, Mandy, this is going to be a little bit like speed dating, with the exception of the fact that you're talking to everybody, not just me. But we'll go back to your childhood, if that's okay.
Ooh. Okay.
So, because you touched on so many sports sponsorships, I'm just kind of curious, what types of activities were you involved in as a child in terms of sports?
So I wasn't. I was dance and drill. So I played basketball, not well, but dance and drill was my thing.
Dance and drill. So I don't know if anyone's seen Dance Moms, but you can see that it's incredibly competitive. So when we talked a little bit earlier, I asked Mandy to kind of explain that a little bit more, because for the most part, you don't necessarily think of it as a sport, but it is incredibly challenging, tons of preparation, tons of pressure, and it probably kind of led you and taught you some things that you still apply today.
Totally. I think we chat a little bit about this as well. My daughter is also a student athlete. She plays at University of West Florida soccer, go Argos. I think the pressure, the work ethic, the coachability, all of these traits, if you will, really are something that you grow up with and you bring it into your everyday life. It's even something when I look at hiring new student athletes. If I could pick up a student athlete, I think most people in this room, I would hire them in a minute. Especially when you hear people have been on teams in colleges, it's something very quickly that a lot of us are like, if they've worked through a lot of that adversity, we'll bring them in very quickly. So something that I think for even me as a leader today, I focus on like, how can I bring that coachability even when I'm hiring people? I have a good record for hiring, but I'm super tight on it to really make sure you're looking for those skills.
Yeah, and that's important to mention as well, because in some of the research that we've seen, 93% of female executives have played youth sports at some point in the past. And that's not a coincidence when we think about women in sport. However, what we find is that after the age of 14, girls are dropping out of sports at twice the rate of boys. So there's all the reasons to keep them playing, but then for whatever reason, and there are some hard reasons that we could explore, but they're dropping out. So with kind of the onset of and the celebration around women's sports, which is particularly highlighted by this Final Four.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I wanted to inquire with you a little bit about like, how does it feel to be sort of at the forefront of this in terms of, one, your personal experience as a mother of a young girl in sport, but then also as a marketer who's really embraced this challenge?
Yeah, I think I moved into this role 3 years ago, and sports partnerships is a small portion. I also am responsible for all the demand generation across the US and Canada for over 6,000 hotels here. But this is the most fun part of my job, and I'm crazy passionate about it. Obviously, I'm quasi-crazy sports mom, so I've been through the whole competitive sports side of it, watching my daughter going through the college recruiting process, which is, I would not wish on my worst enemy, but it is something that you see a lot of these athletes go for, and I think bringing that with Marriott, we really expanded more into women's when I came into this role about 3 years ago. We've had our partnership with NCAA for about 8 years, and we started honestly just basketball, where it was just basketball. It was more of a sales, hosting, and execs. It really was, we were not using it as a marketing partnership at those times. And then we started with women's basketball about 3 years ago, which was incredible. And it's something that I'm super passionate about, but excited about. So this year alone, for instance, we started, we did a game day rituals, a sweepstakes that was for courtside seats to women's. Out of the box sweepstakes entries for that. It's insane. We've got 6 people on the court at the semis and the finals for women's this year. I didn't get to go, so I tore the short end of the stick a little bit this year.
You could be in Cleveland. Right?
I know. I love it. It's the location. Tampa next year for women, so it's going to be incredible. But it's something that I think we're really passionate. We're just starting. So we also just signed a partnership with the U.S. Soccer Federation in January. So this weekend, believe it or not, is also the She Believes Cup with the women's national team in Atlanta and Columbus. Again, Ohio. So I have my team split across the board. So we're doing a big activation in Atlanta. We're also in Columbus as well. But really the big focus is how we as a partner can work more in women's sports. And soccer's a new one. But then we're also working into women's college series in June as well. So there's 90 championships across the NCAA partnership. So there's a lot. And it's just resources and budgeting and what you can bite off each year, but we continue to grow. So I think we're just starting out, Anderson, really, and we're going to continue to build and build there and look into new sports as we continue that relationship.
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important too because not all sports sponsorships or partnerships are created equal, but I believe through all the work that you've done, it's really made a tremendous difference in terms of the authenticity and literally focusing on how do you bring that Marriott authenticity to those partnerships that you have, and what do you look for in terms of either the individual talent or the organizations that you're partnering with?
Yeah, and I think, so we're really picky, and I'm also never looking for a logo slap. So I need to get my message across, and I think a lot of our other brands are like that. It's if I can't get my message across, I'm not all in. So I have to be able to have those assets with each of the partners that really are unique and allow us to tell our story of travel, and not just sticking a logo on things, which is some sponsorships are. So you have to really weigh where you can get your story across and does it make sense, and where is it really authentic to the brand. So for us, it's like, how does that tie back to travel with all these partnerships? So it's authentic to the consumer and to the customer to make that connection. We also, it's funny, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, are you partnered with NCAA because all the rooms, all the hotel rooms for these championships? I'm like, every hotel in this market, whether it's Marriott or not, is sold out. I mean, I don't need that for a partnership. That's just organic and authentic. That happens to every hotel in the market. So it's beyond the room nights. It's really about being able to speak to a new customer that we may not have. They might not be Marriott Bonvoy members. They might not even know what Marriott Bonvoy is. And we see like a lot of student athletes, no clue. My daughter does, just because she's I've been in the company for 25 years. But how do we really show in an authentic way our connection with student athletes and new consumers that we want to grow to long term?
And on the subject of that, because you look after 32 different brands, how do you differentiate and leverage that authenticity when you're talking about so many different brands, right? So you've got to identify what brand makes the most sense for the organization in addition to if you're doing NIL, the actual individual talent as well.
Always fun, because we of course have brand leaders, and everyone loves their child the most. So the great thing about 30 brands is the market demands it. So we like to say we have a brand for every sort of fan. So whether, I'll take the example of like youth sports. So if we are leaning into youth sports, that's where we're going with Spring Hill Suites. It's a larger room, usually, and this is my personal experiences, so crazy competitive soccer mom. It was me, I needed free breakfast, I needed laundry to be cleaning those uniforms. Free parking. Plus I needed to make sure I had a little room so mom had wine 30 at 4:30 with the other soccer moms. So there's brands that, we've got 30 brands, but they're so unique and they're so different. Their affordability, price points are different, that we're really targeting them to the certain audience at the right time and the right trip type. Because, I stay at a Spring Hill Suites, but I'll also stay at a Ritz-Carlton. So it really isn't that you're one person only at one hotel. It's a trip type too. Leisure, business, you guys know. So we really try to make sure the story that we are connecting to in that moment. We have a new 30 that we just launched actually with Spring Hill for youth sports in soccer. And it really ties to that trip type that you have in that moment of time to make sure that it's authentic, it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We have so many different aspects of our lives, right? So on a weekend, I get back and I'm doing the youth sports thing. Here, couldn't really get a great hotel. I'm embarrassed to tell you all where I'm staying because booked at the last minute. Definitely isn't
He's
a
not out of
Marriott.
Marriott.
Not here.
We're booked elsewhere.
We feel that.
But you need to be able to address that entire consumer as opposed to focusing on fractions of their lives. And I believe through the differentiation that you've demonstrated in the marketing, you've been able to do that successfully. In terms of like the measurement around those sponsorships and those partnerships, what's the, as we talked about, return ROI or even return on impact?
Yeah. So, measurement's an investment, right? So I invest, I'm a data geek through and through to my core. Like I started back in the day coding and e-commerce, so I have a very interesting background that the data side of it is so important to me. So we invest in the right measurement. Obviously, there's different touch points across the customer journey with different partners, right? So lower funnel customer journey, there's usually the capability that you can do things from a digital aspect and track those, right? We're all doing that. Is it becoming harder? Yes, with cookie deprecation, things that are making it a little more difficult. And that's where we're really looking, again, with partners, how do we gain more members? How do we bring people into the Marriott Bonvoy family? How do I have their first party data so then I can personalize the message for you, Anderson, and then also make sure that you are getting that message, but I can also track you all the way down, right? So first party data is so important for us, more important than ever. So I think that helps for the mid and lower funnel. Upper funnel, it's we work with morning consults. So one of our KPIs we look at is like NPS. Are our campaigns hitting and getting that message across the customer? Is it doing the work that we need it to do? But we also, we have big goals that we set, and we're constantly looking at measurement each month on are things performing. But then we also are not just doing it at the end, and I'll give you an example of this campaign we just put together for NCAA last year. We start really looking at the measurement of how is this concept landing, right? I'm sure a lot of you have done this, but it's like, how is this concept landing? And before I go and invest all the dollars on this campaign, is it landing with that consumer and that audience that I'm really trying to talk to? So we do a ton of link testing, working with different partners early on to change the message and make sure that that didn't hit. We need to look at doing some different messaging within that 30-second or linear or CTV, whatever we're working together at that time, to make sure it resonates if we're doing the audience. So measurement completely all the time. Sometimes it's a little bit of an overload, but there really are different measurements and KPIs for each part of the journey.
Yeah, and we've experienced that working with you all as well. Whenever we did a campaign, we'd actually introduce a market research study to take the pulse of that youth sports audience. So for example, we understand that soccer travels a lot more, or the fact that team parents and coaches are doing about the same amount of bookings in terms of those hotels. So that way you're not ignoring one side of the audience as well. So there's a lot to be gleaned, and I think through your partnerships, you're able to kind of pull in that data to be able to further tell that story.
And we have our data, right? But at the other side of the house, our partnerships a lot of times have a lot of great data that they're also able to share with us. And as you said, we use third parties a lot as well to kind of get a sense of what we're seeing in the markets. And candidly, COVID threw us from a travel perspective. data wonky for 3 years. And so we're finally getting back to like normalization of it, which is great. But that's where we're also seeing like it's changing, it continues to change, and we continue to learn.
Yeah, and on the subject of the pandemic, one of the things that we always found is that sports never stop traveling. So folks were traveling to sporting events, traveling for youth sports, or just simply, that was actually the first sector to come back after that, because there weren't business meetings happening, and leisure travel, for the most part, was shut down. But sports was incredibly resilient, which only speaks to kind of the strength and the rationale behind those partnerships. As you think about the future and kind of what's next in terms of sports partnerships, what are you looking at now?
You know, I think we just put our toe in with NIL, and I mean, we've dabbled like little things here and there, but this past year we just started in November a very broad NIL campaign with 30 different athletes from different sports across the board. We also have a partnership with Learfield, which gives us access to a lot of like student athletes in uniform, right? Also important. And what we were able to do, which this makes me exciting, and I think the future, and we were talking a little bit about it earlier, is how we're able to continue to build on that. So for instance, we had Suni Lee, she's gonna be in the gymnastics gold Olympian in Paris this summer. We had Steph Castle, UConn basketball player. He actually just launched his reel this morning. Perfect timing. So you can't write some of that stuff, that works out well. And Elliot Cadeau from UNC. So we love this space. It's performed extremely well. I mean, we have these, of course, going through their handles, but then paid behind it to be able to sponsor these and make sure it actually gets, it really gets the audience that the work that went behind it, it makes sense. And we love working with them. I think it was really cool. We got to work a lot with these student athletes this year. I went to SUNY's, I went to Steph's, and some of them, this is the first time they've ever worked with a brand. And it's awesome, you know, like they're learning, they're ready to go, they're excited, and some have their moms, some have their girlfriends with them, but we loved it. We just thought it was a really cool experience, and it was something like we're gonna continue on that path. And I think you'll see us to just kind of maybe change the messaging and story as we learn, because what we were doing is pulling through different brands with a lot of these, again, we have 32, so we have a lot that we can bring in, different stories and messaging, but I think you'll see that evolve a little bit with us in the coming year.
Yeah, speaking of seeing Connor, if perfect, I think we have a reel of the latest Marriott spot, game day ritual, which we'll talk a little bit more about, but there's lots of layers there as well. So roll the video.
The dog's name is Chester.
Go with the narration.
Follow your team wherever they take you. With over 30 hotel brands, Marriott Bonvoy has a brand for every kind of fan.
So it was fun. I have to say, like, that whole with little Chester in the front. So he is an actual rescue dog, not a talent dog. And he was, I mean, I could talk about Chester the rest of the half an hour. You're a real man, Anderson, I told you.
You can keep going.
You want me to talk about the spot, Matt?
And Chester, but I think there's so many layers to that. When we prepped, I didn't realize, first of all, there were how many brands?
4 brands.
Four
I should
brands
actually
represented.
quiz you guys, because I do this with my husband. I'm like, is that my brand? He's like, I'm like,
That's hard. Husbands don't listen now.
no, he's not gonna.
I say that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to the story, and I think we start out with Chester, who's a rescue dog, and the reason why is that shot at a loft. A loft actually has rescue dogs in the lobby. You can actually take them in your room and hang out with them. They're cool, and it's also our pet-friendly hotel. So we start out with Chester, and then the guy with the 2 different socks, so his lucky socks. So the whole concept came about like, there's some crazy superstitions people have and things that they do, right, for game day rituals. My daughter, you know, also, like, I've seen it all. So we start with them, the crazy 2 socks, then we move into the Sheraton, which you saw at the table of all the fans gathering, and we had Duke, who their game day ritual, right, for the Blue Devil is they write on the masking tape before every game. And then he swipes it over to Sydney Carter, who is assistant coach for UT basketball. Ooh. They did really well this year. And she's known for her fashion, amazing nail art pregame. And then she also is for meditation as her game day ritual. So we're at the JW Clearwater. And then we flip over to Fairfield Inn, which is the free breakfast, Ellie Cadeau, and the whole UNC marching band comes out there. And his mom is actually in that shot. But the funny thing about that one too was we actually had the UNC marching band record the whole track, which is B-52's Rome. And it was the coolest experience. I mean, they were just great players. They were so amazing. They were so excited to do this. So for us, like, those are the moments that went like back behind the scenes, back of the house scenes, that we had so much fun with this. And now we're doing the branches of social first, what that looks like. We've got an activation downtown. If you guys are across from FanFest, come on over. We have game day rituals that are happening right outside there all weekend. And then we're also pulling it through linear. You'll see it on TV, CTV, etc. So there's a lot behind it, just a skosh.
Yeah, and all that gets represented in 30 seconds that you may or may not be paying
Or a
attention
15
to.
cut down.
Yeah, or a 15 cut down. Pearl, how are we doing on time? 5 minutes. Okay, awesome. I think we covered a good amount, and I know I had some more of the personal questions for you, but I think I'll ask one more.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not too personal. No, I was just going to go back to your game day ritual. And being a soccer mom, I was just kind of curious, like, what your daughter would say about your
On the sideline?
Sideline personality.
Highly competitive, shocker. But so it's funny. I'll tell you the story really quick. My daughter played competitive soccer. She started at 4, and her coach was the same coach because the daughter was on the team. Loved the guy. So I think I was more vocal. I've chilled out. But I was more vocal in my early days. Early Tootsie Pops are my friends because I realized it will keep you shut up on a sideline. I'd be the one crunching it. But it was funny, my daughter's coach, he always said his dream team would be a team full of orphans. Let that sink in. So he didn't have to deal with any of the parents. And so my name became the parent handler. So my job on the sideline was to basically keep the parents in check because we had some pretty crazy parents that I'd have to be over and be like, all right, our coach is going to get kicked out. I need you to calm down. So my job, and my daughter knows, is that I became the parent handler so the coach didn't have to deal with the parents. They had to come through me. So if you saw me coming, you knew you were in trouble.
He took the most vocal person and made him repent.
Yeah. And other coaches were like, how did you get Mandy Gill? And he's like, her daughter's on the team. So it was, it was fun. Loved it, but that was my job on the sideline.
Yeah, a lot of tough behavior on that. I've been there many times with AAU basketball in Brooklyn, and it's just also interesting the conversations you have on the way home with your child afterwards. But all in good fun, I'm sure.
Totally. No, absolutely.
Well, awesome. Any questions from the audience for Mandy?
You go ahead. All right. My name's Scott. That was great. I really appreciate it. Just curious, I'm a big Marriott person.
We appreciate you.
When I look on the app, I think like a quarter of my marriage I've been in your hotel. That's probably why it's 25 years. So, anyways, my question for you is, as a marketer, what's your thought process, your approach, as far as like the Marriott brand and then all the sub brands? Like, how do you allocate your time, energy? What's your thought process there without giving away trade secrets?
So obviously we have a umbrella brand or portfolio brand called Marriott Bonvoy. That's really my job. So I have a team who are each on individual brands as well, 32 plus, right? So we've got a team that really looks at the story for Marriott Bonvoy and then also the individual brands, and then we'll pulse where it makes sense based on what we're doing for individual brands. But you'll notice in a lot of our collections now, right, we're tying in those other brands to come along with Marriott Bonvoy because really what we're trying, our message is Marriott Bonvoy is not a loyalty program, it's our entire portfolio of 30 plus brands. So, I mean, we even have the Ritz-Carlton yacht. There's a lot. And they're not all hotels. So we're really trying to get that message across to the consumer. So you'll see us pulse the brands in and bring them to life so consumers understand the large footprint we have. Because we're the largest travel company in the world. So it's again, it's tough for everyone to remember all those darn brands. Like I said, I quiz my husband regularly. Sure.
Hi. Mandy, thank you for being here. And Anderson, that was a great conversation. I'm Jason Edelman from Brand Innovators. So I have a question that's not really sports related, but I'm looking on your LinkedIn, 23 years
Yes.
at Marriott. You have a lot of really senior level people here who are in charge of departments. And I think it'd be good to hear from you is like, what's important to keep retention?
Yeah.
Because in this day and age, people are hopping around from company to company, and to see 23 years, I hope you have a parking spot, basically.
So it's funny. We were going to chat about this a little bit, but we ran out of time. So I've been with the company since I worked in college. My parents did not have the finances to afford my college education, so this girl had needed a job. So in Charleston, South Carolina, I saw this hotel opened on the river, and it's called Spring Hill Suites. I was like, they gotta hire me. And I thought, they've gotta hire me, because at the time I wasn't married, and my name was Mandy Marriott. Zero connection, my friends, zero connection. So I schlep in there, and they're like, sure, we're gonna hire you, you're Mandy Marriott. So fast forward, my husband was Air Force, and my mom goes, and this was like 3 years later, do not change your last name.
Yeah, why should
Do not. And I'm like, Mom, what are the chances I'm gonna be working for that company late? And here I am. So Mom was right, I was wrong. I tell my kids this all the time. But no connection, but I will tell you, it's the culture. It's the company culture. I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I started working at the front desk and was like, this is awesome. This is travel. I'm able to make a difference. I mean, at the front desk, which is not the easiest job.
There's a lot of psychology that goes into talking
I mean,
to
it's
people and checking it.
yeah, but I guess we love, like, people, when they're traveling, they're either exhausted or they're excited. There's these moments that you're part of. And I just I bought in early and I loved it. And I think the culture of your company is key. And I see that in our senior leadership in Mr. Marriott. And I've just seen it throughout our company that, like, I am loyal to the core. I also think this comes back to sports, though, too, because I think you have people who are very loyal and, like, they love their team. Maybe they didn't hit the transfer portal yet. And it's really important to them. So I think it starts with culture, and it's also the person you're hiring that has that loyalty to the company. I mean, I look around and see how long people have been with companies before I hire as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. And then just on the subject of loyalty, we call it fandom, right? Because when you think about loyalty, it is one thing, but if you're a fan, you're there thick and thin. I always tell the story, I'm a Met fan. We are having a miserable year, and we're only 5 games into the season.
I'm a Dolphin fan.
But guess what? You gotta believe, we did win. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.